Welcome, podcast listeners and viewers, and thank you for joining us on the LightWave Digest podcast, episode 18. We are here to bring you all the news, reviews, interviews on everything LightWave and beyond. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Hello, Andrew, and hello, Tony. Another month have passed. How have you been?
Hello. Very good, thank you. We've had Christmas.
Yeah. Happy New Year's.
A new year, yeah. It's now a new year.
That's right.
New year, new LightWave, apparently.
Right, yeah. Soon enough. This year, supposedly.
Yearish. Yeah, yearish.
Did you guys do anything special over Christmas?
I relaxed a little bit.
Yeah.
Just been busy working.
Yep.
A lot of work.
Had some time off over Christmas. Enjoyed it. Sad that I had to go back again. Back to being busy at work, but all good.
Yeah, cool.
What about you?
Me? Yeah, exactly. How about you? How about Cageman? I had 3 weeks off during over Christmas and New Year's. I managed to fill that in so that I had 6 days left from previous year. So I was like, let's just take that time. And I've been playing a lot of Farming Simulator 25, which is I absolutely love that game.
Farming Simulator, that's cool.
Yeah, it's.
We played with my wife and my stepson. We played a Power Wash game. The only reason I downloaded it is because they had a Back to the Future module, and it's like imagine a 3D first-person game, but you're power washing stuff. So we're power washing a DeLorean,
spraying water on it.
Yeah, you're spraying water on a DeLorean, but it has all the parts are listed. So every time you get a part, you get that little cha-ching, like the flux capacitor part or something, So power washing, Back to the Future.
Yeah, it's actually
washed away the hopes and dreams of Northern Ireland.
It is so interesting with these type of games, simulator games, because I listened to an interview by the guys who developed the Euro Truck Simulator, and they talked to another game developer, and that game developer was on a podcast because for some reason he talked to that guy and he's like, who are playing these games? Who are playing these? And the funny thing is that you would not believe this. That the guy that make the Euro Truck Simulator, the CEO there, he said it's actually truckers that play Euro Truck Simulator.
Why wouldn't they? Right? They're truckers.
But that's. I need to get home
I don't
from
power
a
wash a lot,
to play a game of Convoy.
But it's so.
I'm not a power washer by trade, but I've done it before. And doing it in the virtual world is kind of fun because it's kind of weird and relaxing. It's weird just tossing the controller back and forth between me and the wife and like, hey, you clean the tires.
Yeah.
And they're like, do you want to clean the car? No.
It's so funny.
Wow, I can have so much fun doing it in 3D.
That's right.
Yeah.
So much easier.
It's
water bills a lot less too.
You don't get wet, cold, and covered in soap.
That's right. None of those things happen in the virtual world.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's a Farming Simulator, and games like that are very, very big in Germany for some reason. But it's the same with Farming Simulator. I have watched a bunch of streams, and it turned out that a bunch of them actually were farmers themselves as well. So I guess it's just what it is, right?
You think that would do the opposite, like City Builder or something?
Yeah, or the power fantasy. The power fantasy where you play an RPG or something like that, and you are doing completely different things from what you do. It's like, if I come home and, it actually has happened. I mean, sometimes when I come home, I might have an idea in 3D, and I actually fire up LightWave, even though I sit with LightWave at work all the time. But let's see if there was, let's make let's say a 3D modeling game where you sort of game as a 3D modeler, whatever that would be.
Okay.
No. I'm talking very hypothetical here. Like,
sure.
Thinking about a game that would simulate what I do at work. Would I actually play that game? I don't think so.
Render compositing simulator.
Yeah.
Have you ever done remember in Halo they used to have a world builder? I would mess with that.
Oh, I do.
So in some ways, it's kind of like.
I mean, guess if you were using Fusion, it would be really much fun. Every time you connected up a node, be a little jing came off, and
it
some little dollar symbols flew into the corner. You'd be like, oh.
Yeah, ching. I mean, that's what really kept you going too. Like when you would clean apart, it gratifies you with that dollar sign. It's like sweet.
Yes, it's the little sound effect goes sweet.
Yeah, sweet. You did it.
Maybe we should get onto the apps. That's what you need. You need to gamify it so everybody gets excited by all the little.
Yeah, maybe the new LightWave just needs some game stuff in there.
Wow, and achievements and stuff like that.
Cha-ching noise every time you plug in a node. Cha-ching.
You made a cube in Modeler. Ka-ching. Oh, achievement.
Achievement.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Enough chit-chatting. Let's go on to the news. What has happened in LightWave land? Well, first of all, we know that the big thing that we're going to talk about tonight is the presentation that LightWave Digital held on the 24th, which is not that long ago. It was just Friday, and it's Monday now when we record this. However,
that's right.
I was poked by Lewis because he have recently, or last year, December last year, he released 2 tutorials for on Liberty 3D. So
sweet.
It's a modeling tutorial and a rendering tutorial, and it's a Casio Edifice ECB 500 wristwatch that he is actually modeling, and he's using LightWave 2024.1. The modeling tutorial is 19 chapters, 11 hours in total, but he goes through the whole thing, right? And then he also have a second tutorial there, which is the same wristwatch, but is actually setting up the shading and rendering in Octane. Using LightWave 2024.1, he specified that he uses Octane version 2023.1.3, which only exists for LightWave 2024. So if you want to follow along exactly, then that's the one that you need. And that one is about a little bit over 2 hours in total. So go over. Cool. We will put links in the description below. So just click there and check it out. There's some demo YouTube video of it as well, so you can sort of get a gist of what you will see and get there.
Oh, that's good, yeah. Because I mean, if you don't really want to, what am I buying? What is this? Who is this Lewis? I've not heard of him.
Exactly. Yeah.
Surprised it wasn't a car.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
the trouble is with doing something like a car, it'll be like, can you do a tutorial for a car? Do you want to sit there for like 3 years? I mean, it'll be a
it'll be a long tutorial, especially the way he does his details with the subdivision.
He's very, very deep with his detailing, which is beautiful, but it's just like, what you do is this, but like 3 million times.
Every little stitch. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay. And moving on to the next big topic is, of course, the LightWave Digital presentation of LightWave 2025. They showed a bunch of new stuff here. So I will start with the thing that a lot of people have asked for, and that is a Python 3 compatible version of LightWave. So essentially what they said is that you can start LightWave and you decide whether you should start it with Python 2 or Python 3.
Oh, interesting.
So if you want to have like all these tools that exist right now and have existed in Python tools that have existed for years, then you need to start Python 2 version. But if you want to, if you are a developer and want to write things, then probably a good idea to actually open with Python 3 and start to develop for that, because at some point we will not have, Python 2, I guess, in the future. So
no, it's completely deprecated now. I mean, I think you'd have a difficulty even get the installer. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, it's like all of the help manuals, the tutorials, and everything that you're going to find online is all going to be for free.
Yeah.
And even I mean, I don't think it's getting replaced, but obviously it's like 3 point something now. It's so it's a big step up in terms of compatibility.
Do they have to rerun the plugins and stuff to make them compatible with 3?
Yeah, I believe they've been doing it. I don't know if they've got all of them yet, so you might find some of them are not converted yet, but they have been slowly doing it. Some of it you can kind of just automatically do it with tools. Some of them need a little bit of
especially the pro tools that I'm not sure if they even finished updating.
No, I don't think. I have no idea actually where they are with that, but that's over 500 scripts to go through.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And also, that's a lot. Yeah,
it's a lot, especially while Oliver did like really, really good documentation. It's just a lot. You've got to test it. You've got to make sure it's working properly. Test it on the old version, test it on the new version, make sure that it did what it did on the last version. It's, and there's like 500, it's getting a bit silly. Yeah. Obviously, I think they're concentrating on the ones that people are using the most. But it's a big task.
Yeah. And the next one is, of course, they showed this before, and it's called RIPR, the new real-time render engine using, is it optics, right? I think it's NVIDIA thing. I don't know exactly.
Reading between the lines, it is. However, I don't know if they've actually stated it outright.
Okay.
So don't quote us if you're saying that those guys said it was. They haven't actually, I don't think, explained the tech behind it.
No, they haven't.
They haven't, because will it work on Mac then?
No, it doesn't work on Mac. You need to have NVIDIA hardware for that.
It uses, I believe, the optics rendering technology core that's optics, which obviously makes with that they are like ray tracing kernels and tools that help make ray tracers inside of NVIDIA. Well, obviously there's because NVIDIA are very proprietary about their hardware. I mean, I would think that there's probably been people who've actually converted it, but then they'll get in trouble legally by NVIDIA. So they don't like people using their CUDA and optics technology on But I mean, it is possible to convert this stuff, but I think obviously because they're using that technology as a fast kind of way of bypassing the GPU and creating these incredibly powerful tools for basically very little internal effort. You're not writing your own rendering engine. You're just borrowing their amazing tools. So we'll have to wait and see if they can get a Mac version of it.
Did they show the demo with glass by any chance?
Yes, they did show glass with refraction, and they had a huge list of things regarding shading that are going to support that I can't remember what they mentioned.
Well, they put in glass. They said they're going to put in SSS, but we didn't see that in the demo. They haven't done it yet.
Exactly.
They said they were also going to have translucency, I believe, for the same. It's just thin SSS, isn't it?
Yeah.
They showed refraction. Now, this is a per setting, so it's like on or off, but you can either have refraction as in like bending the light rays properly, or thin-walled. But it's not like per material. They might improve that in the future. I don't know.
I think it is per
material.
But it means,
if you just want to do, no, it was a global setting.
Yeah, but that's just to test it. Didn't you see that one of the objects actually was a glass object?
Yes, and it was refracting properly.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it was either kind of like you have thin-walled on or thin-walled off. So if you were just using like a plane for doing like windows in a house, then you would just turn off refraction proper, because it's faster, obviously, and it allows you to just, because you don't want to model both sides of the glass, it's just time taking. A lot of renderers do that as a trick.
Polygon.
Just a single polygon, just it's very fast, and so I don't know how advanced that's going to be, but it was wonderful.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was impressed with is you can automatically save out the frames.
That's cool.
and
through the render engine,
does,
so like
it functions as a render engine, and it had passes. So if you wanted to do it as a bit like F Prime, just do 50 passes, and it'll just do like 50 kind of, you know how you get the weird blotches and smears, and then you average it all out, and then you get a much cleaner. It might never be quite as good as a real render without all of the noise and the interpolation and all that, but it'll look a hell of a lot better than the basics. So you would probably get a previs, you know, really fast. It just wouldn't be real time, because obviously like one pass versus 50. But
does the passes do anti-aliasing then? Blends the pixels together?
I mean they do have anti-aliasing, but I think it's more because when you see it, it is very obvious that there's kind of like very similar to what we used to have with radiosity in the old LightWave, how you used to get kind of blotches. And it's just artifacts of trying to render it really fast and doing like not as much interrogation of the rays. So you sort of go, well, instead we'll just do 50 passes that are really, really fast. So it might take like half a second to render, but it's not great for real time.
You said F Prime. Let's not actually use F Prime as an example, because F Prime actually saved a file to disk, then continued to the next, and so on.
I guess
it's more like an adaptive sampling thing, or you know, min-max settings. So you have more anti-aliasing settings, more or less. Like, so one pass is like no anti-aliasing, and then you can have. And he said like 50 passes is like. What did he say? It took like 5 minutes to render out the same animation.
Yeah, like 60 frames. So it was like it's not real time when you do passes. So but it's a render setting. So they're building it as a renderer, which is really nice. You can just be like, right, I'll just set that to render. Go away, make a cup of coffee, back. It's done.
That's cool. And does it work with all the lights?
Well,
like,
here's the thing.
Like
they actually, first of all, they also showed that you can switch out the HDRIs, no problems. And then also they are planning on actually getting some form of area lights into it. Right now it's just an HDRI.
They said they were going to implement lights, area lights, which obviously will be a big thing.
That would be huge,
It's not as flexible as the real renderer, but you know the way it's going, it's
it sounds like it's. I wasn't expecting that.
It's getting
samples.
A lot. Also, did I pick this up wrong? It looks like what's actually happening in a funny way is that was another new feature. So they're working on the GLTF.
Yeah.
Which is like the OpenGL graphics format.
Yeah, graphics.
But I think what's happening is, unless I misunderstood, because I did watch it a little bit fast in places, is it converts the scene in a very, very fast way into a GLTF, and that's what it's using to render. So it's the same GLTF engine that they're using to convert everything up into a compatible format for the renderer.
Okay.
And so they're actually also going to have the GLTF converter, so you can just do a conversion, or it's actually being the same code is used to translate it into GLTF format, which is what the RIPR is using to render with. So that's cool. Kind of cool. Yeah.
And also they mentioned that, if you're using the, PBR workflow, that is actually converted into this. So you can,
Yeah, but I think GLTF automatically supported, or has supported.
Obviously.
Anyway.
PBR,
But you don't need to have like special textures. Yeah, you don't have to have special. It's like when you set things up in LightWave and then send it over to Unreal, there's a conversion going on there that you don't have to think about. So it's the same sort of same thing. I really like what I see there.
Yeah, you can just use standard or
I also
PBR
noticed
shaders.
As well. Sorry, just to interrupt. I also noticed another important thing is that they had glossy reflections working now.
That's cool.
Because before they had just like one sample, and it was like, it's fast, but it looked a bit rubbish. When you want to have that lovely glossy sheen effect of refraction blurring, and that's all working now, and it didn't really seem to impact the speed at all. So fantastic.
That's
cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the next thing is the new Toon pixel filter that was a huge surprise to me, because it essentially it gives the anime people or on NPR people a huge tool set right there, and how you can work with it. Now, this one is super hard to explain if you haven't seen it, because it's essentially a pixel filter where you add objects into it, and then you can say, and you can group objects, and you can save the same objects in different groups and have overrides and stuff like that on what that toon filter should do to that specific object. It's very
simple and very powerful looking. So you can do different edges on different objects, or group a bunch of objects and have the same effect on each one, or even have one layered over the other. So you might have, I mean, I can't imagine why you want it, but one they showed you where they went like one had like a radius of 10 pixels and one had a radius of 5 pixels, and it was red, and there was a red line on top of the black line, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm not sure what I would use it for, but it's kind of cool that you've got that level of power.
Yeah, and it's also node-based as well, so you can go in and actually, do some really cool things. I think he showed like how they could make the outline of the shadow have an edge, generate an edge.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Is it mainly a pixel shader for the edges of the polygons?
It seemed to be a pixel shader for the edges. I watched it all, but I think there were things that they hadn't shown yet. And I think it is often the way sometimes when you're doing a demo, you go, look at this is cool, and then you forget to show the really important thing that that everybody's going, but does it do this? And so it looked really nice.
Yeah.
I have some theories about that, but I best not say, because I have a feeling that there might be a direction that they're going with.
Yeah, let's.
But I'm not going to speculate, because in case I'm right, and then I get in trouble because it looks like they leaked and they didn't. I don't know. But I have some. But I think it's been made very much with, and they've been testing it with the Japanese market.
Yeah.
That's good.
Because obviously, as you're well aware, that the Japanese lightwave market's crazy big.
Yes,
and so this was to just streamline the whole thing to make it. I mean, actually, there's an interesting thing. I wonder if this works with RIPR.
I have no idea. I don't think so, to be honest.
DP-Kit is going to get rolled into lightwave. So all of the tools from DP-Kit are now going to be part of native.
Well, not just DP-Kit; it's all DuPont's actually.
The whole DP ecosystem, which is
even the modular ones too. Yeah, like a tree generator. He had a lot of tools.
There was a tree generator. Yes, I remember.
I think they got the whole thing.
Tools. Yes.
Yeah, tons of lighting tools.
Yeah.
So he had his own instance engine. Like, would they include those things that are? We kind of have a version of their own.
They do, but I'm pretty sure it's been a while since I've used the DP-Kit stuff, but didn't his instancing generator, because one of the limitations of the built-in native instances is you can't say you've got like an animation sequence, you can't offset the time. You have to just make a bunch of copies of the main item and offset them and then instance them randomly. I'm sure his could offset the time. So maybe we'll look into the code and use that on the main instance, or I don't know.
Yeah. Because he had a lot. I mean, even all his lights were different and nice, but I'm not sure they would implement all those like his own. He had every light, didn't he? He had an environment light and an area light.
Well, I think
he had all the lights, sunlight.
I think the easiest way for them to do this is just to do it the same way he did it, just update it, and it's just going to be a whole slew of new tools, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Because it's essentially a plugin, right? So DP-Kit that contains so many different tools. I think it would be easy for them to just recompile it to work with. The latest version of LightWave, instead of trying to cherry pick things out of it.
It would be nice if they took some of the stuff in DP-Kit and rolled it retrospectively back into the main stuff. So there was stuff like native. Where he did lovely little color conversion tools for the certain things, or where you could work out candelas on your light. Maybe they could use that retrospectively, apply that code to native lights, so you can get candelas on native lights or something like that. Be quite cool.
That would be nice. It's like whatever his little icing on the cake he always added in his tools and just put them in the native. So what's the PickIt thing? Since I missed the video, what's
it's actually a picker for It's a very easy picker for instead of you trying to pick the controllers in OpenGL, you open this little interface and if you shift click
2D interface.
Yeah, so it's a 2D interface that has sort of like an image of a body, and then you can see like, oh, if I click here, I will select the hand joint or whatever, right? And
That's
then
sweet. I like those.
And then if you shift click on one of those, it actually also opens. It's selected, but it also opens the graphic editor for you.
Oh, that's nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Does it allow you to bring in like an image of your character?
Oh, I don't know. They had a bunch of different images there. They
showed a bunch of different images, but I think it because the rig's the same size, you might have to mess around with it. But I believe Sean did that because he's made all these really cool tools that work with the RigIt software. So they showed an updated version of the walk generator.
Oh yeah,
they've improved that. Again, these are all just like enhancements and on top of RigIt to sort of make it easier to select, to to position it. They've improved a lot of the RigIt code from version 1 so that they can sort of even do like stop and start, and so looks really, really, really cool tool set. And they're just building and building on it, really.
Yeah, I love that.
And then we have super normals, which
ooh, that looked good.
Yeah,
that was really good.
Flips normals, huh? So you just don't have to go to modeler to flip them?
No, it's not. It's about it's two main things. You can actually see and manipulate the normals. Right.
Okay.
So, if you've got an example, so one of the examples they give, which is a really classic example. So say you've got like a cube and you've got like a little flat connecting polygon. You can just adjust the normals so that the normals on the flat go like that, and the normal of the little fillet bends across it, so you just have like one polygon curve shading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can, and also another really handy thing, which is one of the things that has been broken in LightWave for a long time, is if, for example, you import some CAD data and it comes with a baked vector normal, and then you rotate it, it breaks the direction of the normals.
Oh yeah.
You can just go like click a button and it fixes it.
Yep.
Which is fantastic.
That's cool.
Also, another really cool tool they showed was like, say, if you did a Boolean into a shape, you can get the original shape behind it in the background layer, and get it to readjust the normals based on the background layer object. So that you can get it, so like if you cut that shape in, but get all the normals facing correctly, so that you don't get those like weird, janky. Like it's a lot easier if you see the video, which I'm sure they're going to edit that down and show it.
Yeah.
But it sort of helps a lot of those like horrible normal issues that you get in LightWave, because we've never had proper like vertex normal manipulation before. And it's just like a full tool set for vertex normal, which is kind of like really hard to explain until you've ever had to do it. And then you're like, oh, right, wow, that is going to make especially because a lot of it is just auto. You go, auto, and it's like, it's fixed, hooray.
Yeah, sure.
Which is kind of what you want.
Yeah. And then finally, here's a big thing for a lot of people. HDRI Light Studio is now fixed for both native and Octane.
That's great.
Yeah. So that
hasn't worked for a while.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah, it was ever since they made the changes for 2020, which was annoying because that was the last official version before it went dark.
Yeah.
I wonder what version I even have. I don't remember.
I think
it works with the version I got. Yeah, might not.
But yeah, they mentioned also that they actually contacted the guys behind HDRI Light Studio, so they probably sent them like builds of 2025 or something just to make sure it works there. I don't know how they work, but they mentioned that he worked and contacted them and talked to them, and
that's such a great tool.
Yeah.
Yes. It did used to work, but it used to work with the janky old background thing, and now because they updated it in 2020 plus, they've presumably just fixed the code so it now works properly, which, it's great. You can just click on a surface and it'll redirect the ray.
The lights. Uh-huh.
So that's going to be for people who use that system, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's great for product shots. It's great
I was thinking about that.
Creating your own HDR background images. It was wonderful for that stuff.
Yeah,
cool. And then they actually, new feature time again, they actually showed something called LightWave Construct. And they made 3 versions of that. One for modeler, which is probably not going to be procedural, because modeler, it's not... And then...
although I do have a plan. I'm going to talk to them about that. I do have a plan.
But then...
Made my plans.
Then they also showed... What they showed was the... modifier, so it's essentially a modifier stack thing that enables you to actually build these. In this case, it's stairs that are procedurally generated. But he also mentioned that it also exists as a ProGeo node as well.
Okay.
So it's essentially.
So you can literally in layout, you basically just sort of go, right, I'm going to start here. And I'll make a set of stairs, and then I'll turn it 90 degrees, and then I'll turn it 90 degrees and go up, and then I'll put a platform, and then I'll adjust the rails, and it's like a full set of tools for making stairs.
Does it use like a spline guide for that or something?
I don't know what else it can do. No, it was just drawing on the face. Like you select the little selector, and you can just flip it, and it was like when you see the video, it took me a little while to work out what they were doing, but it has little controllers on it. It's beautifully done.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a prototype. So this is just the first one they've done.
Yeah.
But they're hoping to expand it and do more of these like really cool sort of live interactive, so I just went, I'll plonk a staircase there and then I'll draw it. Because it can be quite fiddly. And obviously it's a prototype. So it will work as just a direct sort of modifier stack item, or in ProGeo tools, or in Modeler, so you can do it, with maybe a little bit more precision in Modeler, although you'll lose the interactivity.
Yeah,
it's in Modeler. It's probably going to be more like how LightWave CAD works, which is destructive in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, and then they also mentioned stuff, there's render speed improvements is in the works, a new particle system, we don't know what that is, and obviously also they mentioned, I was kind of surprised with this, a faster mesh handling and layout, or data set handling. I don't think they said mesh, I think they said data set, better data, faster data set. Whatever they mean with that.
We can only, it's faster mesh in layout. We don't exactly know what that means. We didn't see a demo of it, so apparently it's lovely.
Can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
And then they didn't show anything about the new particle system, just said there was a new one.
They just mentioned that's what was one of those mentions.
That's cool.
I wonder if, because when years and years ago when they brought in flocking, I think that was a prototype for a new particle system that never really, they're just sort of like, and we're done. You're like, but that could have done so much more. It might be that's what they're basing it all off, the code for that, where they're just fleshing it out and finally finishing that particle system that was flocking.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to speculate here because...
I'm just curious to know whether that's maybe what they're thinking.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have a new system that's more integrated within the other systems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the original particle system's nice, but man, talk about tab overload.
And also, when was that implemented? Was it LightWave 7 or something like that?
A long time, yeah.
Probably earlier, to be honest. I'm sure there's been like particle simulation explosions and stuff, probably going back to the Babylon 5 days. I mean,
but that was usually plugins like third-party plugins. Dynamic Realities was one. They had a bunch of those sort of plugins way back.
It's been there a long time. It's like 6 or 7, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
modern code, if they ever have
millions of particles.
Yeah, and obviously tonight's guest is no other than Steve Bjork. So we are going to switch over to that very soon. But yeah, he's a really cool guy. It was a really, really nice chat. So don't miss it. It's coming right very soon.
Very soon, like now?
Not right now. Yeah.
I'm saying.
Hello, everyone. Tonight's guest is no other than Steve Bjork. He has been working within the 3D industry since 2003. He started his own studio called Eggbox Studios and have been doing everything from architectural visualization to visual effects. Welcome, Steve.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Hello.
Super cool.
Well, yeah, this is exciting.
Yeah,
isn't it? Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yikes.
And the thing is that I usually, for these type of interviews, I really want to dig back into history. Like how did you come into computers and later on 3D and stuff like that? So can you take us back and tell us that history thing for us?
Wow. Yeah, sure. I don't have any sort of traditional background in art or 3D or any of this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Although saying that, I grew up with Lego and model kits and drawing and cartoons and all that sort of stuff.
Nice.
It just never seemed like an avenue that I was ever going to be able to get into. I was a musician. I got into bands. I've got my guitar here.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that to me just seemed to be that was the career that I was going to go into. So I got into some bands in the 90s. I was still getting hassle from sort of family that I needed a proper job.
Yeah.
And that led to me training to be a cabinet maker and making furniture. And my thought process was that if I did that, I could then make my own guitars. If I knew how to do woodwork, I could then make guitars. But obviously for my family, it was me making furniture. So I did that for a few years, lost a job and ended up just not really knowing what I was going to do or what I wanted to do. I knew that I was inherently quite creative, and unfortunately the kind of furniture making jobs that I was doing was not overly creative. It was basically just following plans and, following other people's direction. And I saw a job posting for a screen printer and a sign writing company. And that somehow just seemed to be like a little bit more creative than what I was doing. It was around the same time that I'd bought a computer, my first sort of proper computer, my first PC, and had discovered digital art, and that there were digital art magazines that were coming out. There were things like Computer Art magazine, and obviously you had Ben Vost on recently, and his name sort of became etched into my brain because he was doing computer arts, and he did like 3D World and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So I was learning sort of digital art programs. I just got my first job as a screen printer, and I was doing little bits of work in like the design department as well, and seemed to have some sort of aptitude towards doing this sort of stuff. A friend that I was in a band with got a job at a video games company purely off of the back of being a really good artist. And he was like, "Oh, we use this software called LightWave. You should, check that out. I think you'd get on well with it." This was 5.6, I think. And I tried 3D Studio Max, and I had a free copy of TrueScape that I got from 3D World magazine. And I was interested in it, but nothing really clicked. And then there was something about LightWave that it just made sense. I think from my background of making furniture and having real world units, being able to work in millimeters and inches and stuff like that. being able to just take primitives and cut them up, and essentially it did everything that all the other applications did, but the user interface or the way that it worked just sort of made sense.
Yep.
And that was just the spark that was, well, I guess this is what I'm going to do now. You know, I was excited by it. I was excited by the opportunities of it. I've never been a particularly great traditional artist or illustrator. But working in 3D, it just makes sense to me. I just understand space, you know, that sort of spatial thing. So yeah, that then led to I got a job for a newspaper company, a newspaper publisher. Worked in their art department for a little while, and then ended up working with that same friend at a architectural visualization company. And the rest is history, as they say. I worked there for, I think, 3 years. I very arrogantly thought, well, my boss is a bit of an idiot, as most people do when they're young. If he can do this, then I can do it. So I left, set up Egg Box Studios, and a couple of years later panicked because I realized that actually it's quite difficult to run your own business. And yeah, but I'm still here. So that was 18 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and things have changed a little bit, you know, like, as I said, like 2 years after starting it up, I started up primarily doing architectural visuals. 2 years after starting, we had like one of the many global financial crises that we've had over the years. But that one basically wiped out the housing market. So I found myself with basically no work, no customers, no clients. Somehow I think it was really through when forums were more of a thing. So it was things like CG Talk and Spin Quad and the LightWave forums and all these things. And I think it was through CG Talk that somebody randomly reached out to me and sort of said, oh, you know, can you do some work for me? And that just led to me doing more work for people in the States. I think because of the economy, it was cheaper to hire people in the UK. And yeah, I just ended up doing work for people in the States. I did like a couple of TV commercials and some little spots I did a job for ESPN, this really random universal remote control device, which looks absolutely ridiculous nowadays. And then it was just a case of diversifying and doing all sorts of different things. And that's kind of been what I've done since, just scrabbing around for whatever work I can get, whatever's going to pay the bills. Nice. It's led to, you know, doing product visualizations and working on AR and VR content, working for a VR company as a startup in 2015 to 2018. And yeah, doing pretty much whatever I can sort of since, you know.
Ah, cool. I mean, you mentioned earlier before we recorded, but you mentioned that you had an Atari ST instead of the Amiga. Can you tell us a little bit how did that come, and what did you do with it?
It was purely because of the music thing. And
okay. Yes, of course.
Yeah, the Atari was superior. The music, it had some good software on it. I remember that at the time that I wasn't interested in music, so it wasn't a thing for me. So yeah, I remember that.
I think Cubase started on the Atari, right?
Yeah, so I had Cubase, and there was this little attachment thing that you could plug in that was basically like an audio interface or like a sound card.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think there was a point, it was again around the 90s, and I was in bands and I was living in a house with a whole bunch of other musicians. And we were all quite poor. And there would just be points where we would just swap instruments, we would swap equipment, we'd need to pay rent or whatever, so we would like sell something, but we'd sell it to a friend so that we could then swap something back for it, you know, when we had some money.
Nice.
So yeah, the Atari was just that just that thing. I got it. I played around with it. I made a few terrible compositions on it, and then it got swapped for some other piece of equipment down the line.
Yeah. I remember. I mean, pretty much. I mean, I'm also sort of like a musician. I was in bands and stuff like that. We're one band really, and we actually visited. I think it was 3 or 4 different recording studios, and all of them had an Atari. Everyone. Wow. It was just why, and this is during the 90s. And then when it came to the Amiga, it was a video production tool instead, with the gen locks and stuff like that. So it was kind of interesting in Sweden, at least, that all these audio studios they had Ataris, and all the video studios had Amiga computers. It was super cool.
Yeah, anyways. It was. Yeah, like the computer thing was weird because I had a Commodore 16. I wanted the Commodore 64, but my parents couldn't afford it. But they were told I think they got it from Boots, which is like a chain of chemists, but they sell other stuff. So they bought this Commodore 16 from there, and the guy that sold it to them said, well, it's essentially, you can buy an add-on pack, and that makes it into a Commodore 64. And I think they sold out of Commodore 64s, or it worked out cheaper or something. But they were like, we'll do this. And then my birthday's at the end of October. So I think they bought it for my birthday and then said, for Christmas, we will buy you the add-on pack so that you have a Commodore 64. And the add-on pack was, I don't know if it was illegal or it was discontinued or whatever happened, but I just ended up having a Commodore 16. Yeah. And that was my only computer that I had until probably early 90s when I had a ZX Spectrum just for playing games and stuff on. And again, that lasted for maybe a year or so before it broke and something didn't work. And then I had the Atari for maybe 6 months. And then I didn't have anything until I bought the PC, which eventually led to me doing sort of digital art stuff. It was just not really, wasn't even, a thought. And I think it's interesting because I know a lot of people that work within this field, and certainly, like the CG artists and stuff like that, people that are doing like 3D stuff and animation, there's a lot of very technical people. But for me, it was just not a thing. The only reason that I'm really doing this is because, I guess because LightWave, because something clicked. And it actually made sense to my brain, which is not a very technical brain. It's just a creative thing.
So,
yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, a lot of people, Lightwave land, that have been around for forever, came in via the Amiga. But the thing is that what is understated about the Amiga is, yes, people would write their own custom scripts and stuff because it was like super easy. It wasn't meant to be hard. And it was a visual operating system. It was meant to be for visual people, a lot like the Apple was in the early days. PC was the thing that was the hard thing with all of you had to, write your own DLLs and, faff around with the registry and all that nasty stuff. But the Amiga was always a very visual operating system. So it makes perfect sense. It was LightWave was designed from the Amiga where everything was meant to be visual, not, yes, the fact that it was text-based because you had 5 million things on the screen. Otherwise you would just have like a million inscrutable icons that you're like, what is that? What is that's an ad plus what I can't make out, and so the very much there is that sort of thing of it was a combination of being very visual while also being kind of like screen literate, where especially in the days, people forget, people who are never lived through it, when you had tiny monitors, which nowadays, most people have a minimum of like 2K monitor as a minimum, and it's bizarre when you see people. There's a couple of people in my office actually that have the old monitors, the 1024 by that just the squarer one.
It's like 768.
Oh yeah.
No, it's not. It's not that. It wasn't that small one. But when but you didn't have the full HD, and you're like, oh god, how do you? Oh yes, I actually had two of them for years.
I actually still have one of those big monitors, the thick ones, right?
CRTs.
Yeah, CRTs. Yeah. I think
my
it's
first
22-inch.
Amiga monitor was a CRT forever, and it was had to sit there and do modelling on an interlaced screen. It's mental now to think about that.
But yeah, I mean, also one thing that, I mean, you have sort of alluded to it already, that you are a musician, right?
Yeah.
So do you use like Cubase today on your PC and write your own music, and or how is that interest going for you?
Yeah, I do. There's still always talk, as there always is, of getting a band together and all this sort of stuff, but it's it's always difficult. But yeah, I do. I write my own stuff occasionally. I still have an interest in it. I have Studio One, which is a PreSonus application.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it reminds me of a lot like early Cubase before it became overly complex. Everything's just very simple. It's there. It does the job, and it just seems really intuitive. And that's, again, it's just that thing where if something's difficult to use, I just can't use it. I don't have the brain power to figure out the way that I'm supposed to do something. I just want to do it. I just want to know. Oh, I know where the button's going to be. It's going to be there. It's going to. So yeah, I use that, and that's great. And whenever I get the opportunity to, so if I'm creating like my own animation stuff, for example, almost the first thing I'm thinking of is what sound effects I can put on, what music I can put in there. I love the sound design. I love all the Foley stuff. If I'm doing a show reel, the first thing I do is write the music for it and then sync everything to the music.
Yep. Yeah.
So the music stuff's it's nearly always the first thing. And if I ever get the opportunity to work on a project for someone, if someone needs anything animated, I'm always pushing for the audio side of it, because I think it's overlooked so much. And it's amazing how flat something is, a visual thing with no audio base.
Yeah, it's it's like audio.
But unfortunately, I was going to say, unfortunately, with 3D is one of the hardest things that you can do on a computer that isn't programming, as how I always put it. Except then then you have to learn how to do audio as well. Oh God, I think you've came into it with a mind for it, and that makes it possible. I think if you're starting from cold, doing anything, because like obviously I've grown up very visual, or very, I can think in terms of timelines, albeit I struggle with animation because I don't really know where I'm going with it. But it's, as you say, if you've got a spatial mind, 3D it clicks, doesn't it? And you have actually got to have be able to visualize what it is in your head before you put it on screen. In the same way with audio, you've got to have it in your head before you can make it.
It's always working backwards, and I think that's where a lot of people struggle, because there's different brains, people work differently. For me, I always need the end goal, and then I can work back from it. It's kind of like getting a brief from a client, right? They know hopefully they know what they want. So if they can say, I've got a budget of this, I've got a timeline of this, and this is the end result that I need, then everything's brilliant. You can just get cracking on it. You know what all the deliverables are, what all the goals are, what all the targets are. If they come to you and say, well, I don't really know how much we've got to spend, how much is it going to be? How long is it going to take? I've got a vague idea of blah, blah, blah. It's just so painful to even get started on a project. So yeah, for me, it's, if it's an animation project, for example, which is going to encompass all the modeling and then obviously all the animation and then all the audio, I'm thinking of that end product right from the very start and then working backwards from it. And I will walk around, visualizing exactly how it's going to be. And I will, I'm making footsteps, or I'm picking up a pen, or I'm just thinking of all those little bits that I need to do along the way.
Yeah. I remember, you remember Jurassic Park, right? And in one of the behind the scenes, the animators actually, because this was groundbreaking CGI at that time. This was soft image on SGI machines. And so the animators actually, they were actually filming themselves running around as if they were dinosaurs, right? Just to see someone stumbled when they jump over like a log, and that actually came to be animated into the shot and stuff like that. So I think that is a very methodical way of sort of get the feeling of what you are going to animate before you sit down and actually do things in the computer. So I think that is super cool, actually. You do that.
I think if you think about what we do, I'm basically just a kid, right? I've never grown up. I'm a 48-year-old child. And as I get older, I allow myself to be more of a kid, you know.
Yep.
And just embracing that thing that we're playing with toys. We're making our own toys and then we're playing with them. So the whole idea of acting things out and using your imagination, like, we should all be doing that. And most of the best animators or best like character animators, they're great actors. You know, they know how to act. They know how to pose, and you know, you have to be able to physically do it in order to put it onto a screen in some way. And it's the same with, you know, 3D modeling and stuff like that. You have to have some knowledge of what's going on around you, I think, or for me anyway. You know, I need to physically know how something's created and how it's assembled and what the material properties are like, and I need to touch things and look at things and pull things apart and research them online. The more that you know something, then the easier it's going to be to recreate it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I remember seeing loads of 3D models of guitars, for example, and lots of people that do them that have never even played a guitar, or perhaps never even picked one up. They've just looked online, looked at pictures and blah, blah, blah. And it's so easy to spot the things that are wrong on it if you've played a guitar. And it's the same as the things like the uncanny valley and all this sort of thing, you know, which seems bizarre because we all know what people look like. But things like guitars and other stuff like that, you know, I see so many things wrong with, you know, people's models, and it's generally just because they don't understand it. They've not picked it apart or studied it enough, you know.
You know, when I worked on World in Conflict, we actually hired 2 real Spetsnaz soldiers, or they were actually Spetsnaz instructors from Russia, because we were actually doing a game where Russia sort of, you know, the Cold War never ended and stuff like that, and then it actually became World War III more or less. It's sort of weird to talk about it now because of what is going on in the world, but when we did that game, anyways, we had those guys doing all the motion capture, and the thing was that they were not allowed to actually have any prop weapons because they were jumping over things and then landing and rolling and then standing up again. The thing was that when we actually parented the weapon, we got the motion capture and we parented the weapon to their right hand, because they were still mimicking that they were actually holding a real Kalashnikov when they did this. And we didn't actually have to touch, because it was perfect. They were so drilled and so good at doing exactly this military stunt stuff that they had to do, you know, jumping over and standing up, shooting. It was super interesting to see their precision in how to handle a weapon that they didn't even have in their hands. It's kind of like, you know, that sort of, and when you see that, and then you see like average Joe on the street trying to do the same thing, and you're like, that doesn't look real, you know.
It's I've seen so many breakdowns, I'm sure you have as well, of obviously people going through movies and, you know, like an ex-SAS guy going through a military movie and pulling it apart and stuff like that. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's I think that we naturally, you know, we as in people that are doing like CGIs and stuff like that, I think we probably have quite a good eye because we're just observing everything all the time. You know, you have to have that. But obviously, to the layperson, much of this stuff doesn't matter, does it? You know, it's
no. I mean, it's cool action. Okay, whatever. It doesn't matter. But when you started looking into the details, that's when you see the difference between, like, oh, that is actually that's a professional doing that, or here's someone that doesn't really know what he's doing, but he's sort of trying to do something. But
I think it's a mixture of, you can see the mistakes that they're making because you made them. There's that. But also it's that you have to. A lot of people see without looking. They'll just go, "Oh, that's the thing that's there," and you're like, "It's wrong, though." Well, what do you mean it's wrong? Well, because you're obviously not looking, are you? You're thinking. Oh, you've glanced. You're thinking that's what it looks like, but it doesn't look like that at all, and you need to properly observe. And it's the same as if you're a painter. You know, it blows my mind. You know, I mean, it's hard to do it programmatically in 3D, but, you know, when someone can work out the dappling of light and shade and working out local light and shade based on the environment and things like that, I mean, that's got really hard when you think about it. It's a thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about, which is maybe it's just me, is the white. You know, if you've got a white box in a very dark room, it looks dark grey on the screen. And a lot of people are going, well, why isn't it white? And it's like, well, because it wouldn't be. Your brain figures it out that it's a white box in a dark room. But you sort of like, when you're doing it in a render, you're like, well, that doesn't look right. And the client's not happy. And you're like, oh, God, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, I have exactly had that. Like when I was first doing architectural visuals, So we were essentially taken over from watercolor artists. And some of our clients were actually traditional watercolor artists that used to do all the architectural visuals. And obviously 3D was coming in. So most of our techniques were following their guidance. So you'd have foreground branches and foreground shadows. They were lit from a certain angle and, you know, all these different things. But yeah, the amount of times that we'd have clients that would say, the eaves of the house aren't white. It's like, well, no, that's because it's in shadow. The porch isn't white. Why is that dark bit there? Well, that's the shadow. No, it all needs to be white. So you do it all white, and essentially everything is like a luminous color. Like the grass is luminous green. You know, the white is white. And they're like, well, this is horrible. It's like, well, yes, because we've basically taken all the shadows out and all the highlights out.
No, this actually reminds me
of what you asked for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we actually had a revisit of Lewis, actually, and he talked exactly about that specific thing where an architect, he wants this to be clean, very clean, and things, and he talked about the fact that the architects know some things that you don't know as an artist, but you also as an artist need to educate the architect that, hey, if we don't do this, it's going to look weird, and things like that. Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting.
It happens sort of all over, but I think the architectural thing is really interesting because it depends who your client is. Sometimes your client is a property developer, and essentially all they're interested in is having a pretty picture that they can use to sell the property before it's built. And obviously they save money, and you know, everything looks great, and that's fine. And you can be a lot more artistic with that. And essentially they can have like a little disclaimer saying it's an artist impression, so things may change, you know. And if you're working directly with an architect, they tend to get they've got much better. I think they've got much better because a lot of them are also doing their own visuals now as well. You know, they're using Unreal or whatever it is. But they always used to be quite anal about the tiniest of details.
Oh, yep.
About whether there was the correct amount of brackets spanned along on a piece of guttering, that no one's going to care about. You know, they really care about it, and the end image can look horrendous, but as long as architecturally everything is perfect, they will be happy. And then you've got the pushback from maybe the developers or the marketing company or whatever saying, well, this looks terrible. So it was always a struggle working between those two things. But I think it has got better. And I think if you can over the years, obviously, I've worked with lots of architects and I've worked with lots of sort of building companies and property developers, and you learn how buildings are created. And I suppose from my background in doing like cabinet making and joinery and things like that, I have some skills in construction sort of work. So I think once they understand that you know what you're talking about, if you can converse with them about, different types of zinc cladding or, cedar cladding or, this is RAL color, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
They tend to calm down a little bit and be like, okay, you know what you're doing. We'll leave you to it.
Yeah.
As long as it looks good, it is good. But yeah, it is. It has been very interesting over the years to see that change.
I think it's interesting because Lewis showed off some architectural stuff that he did. 2 of them that he had the same architect working. The first time he did, it was it's essentially a similar house, but with 2 different locations. The first project he did that he presented with that architect actually had to come and stay with him in his studio, backseat driving every little stroke of instance that of grass.
I want a tree there. I want a bush there.
Yeah.
I want some grass there, but not there. I can see your face. You're like going, oh God, no.
That was kind of interesting. And then he had the same architect again with a new project that he showed that he did this year. And this time the architect didn't have to live in his studio, but actually he did it through screen sharing on Skype or whatever. But it's still having that back seat, kind of interesting.
It is. It's really frustrating. I've been lucky enough not to have too much of that over the years. I have had a little bit of it, but it's I don't know how you deal with that really. I just try and avoid it because it's. I think it's also it's a different mindset of being and this is still something I'm trying to figure out, but being a freelancer versus being an agency. And you can be a one-person agency, but essentially the difference is that a freelancer, you're working as an employee of sorts, on a hired basis, whereas an agency, you're supplying a service. And if you're being hired as an agency to supply a service, then you absolutely don't want anyone over your shoulder. What they essentially want is a freelancer. And unfortunately, if that's how you're working, then you are an employee, and that's kind of what you have to put up with. That's what most people have to put up with when they're an employee, But yeah, it's a shame that there are people like that, because essentially they should just be hiring people for their skills and then leave them, to do their skills. Or going back to the brief, they should have a cohesive brief that they can then just be like, here is exactly what I want. You do it. Otherwise, you're just living their fantasies as these ideas come into their head. You're the person that's sticking them on the page or whatever. Yeah, but it's really frustrating.
Plus, as well, sometimes, and I think there's a lot of clients, and I say clients because it could be a boss or it could be a customer, but they don't understand the process. They'll look at something and go, well, I don't like that. That's not like that. So, yes, it's not finished. It's not actually rendered yet, or I haven't done the final grading or the tone mapping pass yet. And it won't look like this, but I have to show you this now because you're asking for me to show it to you. But it's not done. Well, I don't like it. So, I know it's not finished.
Oh, God. I mean, this reminds me a little bit about when we interviewed Chris Sapara, when he worked on one of the Star Trek, was it Enterprise, I think? And they came up with the boom text, where it's if there is an explosion somewhere, they actually had a sort of like a card with the text boom on it, just to make sure that, because here's the thing, when you deal with certain clients, if they see like a wireframe preview, they don't understand what they're seeing. Maybe you do a let's say OpenGL shaded view, and they're like, is this actually defined? Is this what it's going to look like? They don't understand the process. So, but then when they came up with this boom text thing, it actually it sort of helped them a lot, at least to make sure that well, this is what the explosion. This is the explosion, but it's not going to look like that. Everyone knew that, so it's kind of interesting how you sometimes have to create a workflow just to avoid certain concerns from a client. I don't know if you have had to do that.
Oh God, yeah. I don't know anyone that hasn't. It's a constant problem, isn't it? But I think the biggest problem with it is that it all comes down to education, and I think a big part of kind of like running, if you're freelancing or running a company, whatever it is, the actual work part of it is such a tiny amount of your time. You've got all the admin stuff and doing your taxes and all your bills and chasing invoices and all this sort of stuff. And a large chunk of actually working with a customer, certainly on the early stages, like a new customer, is education. And it's...
Oh, yeah.
There's been times where I've spent days talking to someone that didn't even end up being a customer. Because by the time they've understood all the process, they're like, oh, no, we can't afford that. That's way more complicated than we expected.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you get better at it and you try to get to the point quicker. And I suppose if you've got lots of examples of what you can do, at least they then feel comfortable that, okay, we know that it's going to look good at the end, or you've got this project which is similar to what we want to do, so we know what the end result will be. But ideally, you would go through, if it was an animation project, for example, you would go through the process of scripting it, storyboarding it, creating an animatic, and then slowly refining everything. But quite often there's just not the time for it. So you end up, and also if the customer's needy and they need to see constant iterations of things and they've not quite decided on what they want, the cleaners just popped in, so we're going to show it to them and get their opinion, and oh, my wife wants to have a look at it and have her opinion. Oh, God. And it just gets really muddy. So it's really difficult. And I think if you're in that middle ground of being, you're not a massive studio, and you're maybe not a student that's just starting out. If you're just a small, like myself, like a one-man band, or maybe there's just a couple of you working together and you're getting those sort of mid-range projects, they're the ones that tend to get a little bit more muddy, I think. But it's, once you've worked with someone, this is why I think like selling to existing customers is always going to be easier than trying to find new ones, because once they're educated and once they've done it once, it's so much easier just to work with them again, and it gets cheaper, it gets quicker. They can give you like a really flouncy brief that's, it doesn't have a lot of description in it, but you essentially know what they want. You get to understand what, more wow means, or I don't know, could you zhuzh it up a bit? You kind of understand what they mean by that. So, but yeah, I've definitely had it. I think everyone's had it, and it's I don't think it ever gets easier, really.
Plus as well, the fact that they're micromanaging you is actually adding to their bill.
Yeah.
So they'll be like, oh, we'll leave you to be. It'll take you a couple of weeks. We'll leave you alone, because if they want I'm going to have to do a slideshow every 3 days, then that's just added an extra half a day to your bill every time they've done it.
And there's always been that thing of, people, well, essentially, I guess it's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect, but we've got, people have access to all these videos on YouTube, things like CGI and animation is not an exclusive thing to people that have lots of money anymore. It's something that can be done relatively quickly compared to, 20 years ago. And obviously with all the AI stuff, this whole idea that you can press a button and create something in 10 minutes is not actually outside the realms of possibility. It's just that if they want something specific, it's going to take much longer. So you get customers or potential customers that know a little bit of information about something, and they just think they know the whole process. So they don't understand why it's expensive, why it's going to take so long, why one small iteration means that you have to re-render like 3 minutes of footage or something, So yeah, it's always difficult, but I think because people just want things quicker and quicker, and they realize that well, I don't know, like hardware's cheaper than ever, software's cheaper than ever. Technically, we should be able to do things much quicker and much faster, but instead we just push the limits even more.
What's it called? Murphy's Law?
Yeah.
When
Moore's Law, is it?
Moore's Law. Yeah. But you said something here. Did you say Dunning-Kruger effect?
The Dunning-Kruger effect,
Yes. I was nodding along. Obviously, you don't know what that is.
No, I've heard it, but I don't actually understand it. I guess someone that listen to this one might not know either. So, can you educate?
I think essentially it's knowing a little bit of information and thinking you know a lot more. So there's a lot of people who believe they're experts in something because they know a little bit of information about it. And there's
okay.
I can't remember all the ins and outs of it, but it's essentially like the more stupid you are, the more intelligent you think you are. So I don't know if this is like specifically the Dunning-Kruger effect, but there is that thing of, just knowing a tiny bit of it. The people who know the least tend to think they know more because they're not clever enough to know that they don't know as much.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you look at it on a graph, if you actually just Google Dunning-Kruger and probably find a very simple graph on Wikipedia, just to flash up on the screen, but it's kind of like people start up here and then they drop down to here when they think that you're in your I know pretty much lots. And then they slowly get up to about here. But the people who are at the absolute beginning think they know twice as much as the actual experts because they just think because they know a little bit and they understand. They go, oh, wow, I know everything about it. It's like, you're an idiot, mate. You don't actually understand anything. But their confidence in their ability to do this until they actually, obviously, when rubber hits the road, as they say, they will rapidly find they don't know anything. But their confidence in it is huge.
You have been using LightWave now for many, many years, and I wonder a little bit about what other tools you have added to your tool set, except for LightWave. I mean, I'm talking other 3D software. I'm talking compositing, video editing, things like that. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. To be honest, not a lot has changed over the years. I'm a simple man in many ways, and I just know what I like, and I will get, I have a very small tool set, and I will get the most out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So because I think it was funny. Maybe I'll show you a bit in a minute. But you were talking about my Halloween entry thing for the LightWave competition.
We were going to talk about that one.
And I loved in that you were talking about potential fluid sims and stuff, and it's nowhere near that complicated because by the time I would be able to do a fluid sim and even get the software to do it and learn how to do it and all this sort of stuff, I can bodge it so quickly in a different way for how simple it is, and I will even work around the simplest way of doing something. So I'm using LightWave 2018 until I get the upgrade, which I won. Woo!
Oh yeah! Wow!
Which I didn't realise I'd won until I got an email.
You should have been like, "Deuce, where's my upgrade?" You should have been like when he was on the.
But
he wouldn't have heard you, and that was ironic. But
yeah, I think he had something to do with that. No, I'm getting the 2015 one because I thought, well, I've held out this long, so I'll get the next version.
2025, you mean? Not 2025.
Well, yeah, that would be a backgrade, wouldn't it? So yeah, I use LightWave 2018 at the moment, and a selection of plugins, nothing major. I use Octane. I've used Octane for, since 2018, maybe just before that actually, which was just a game changer. It's fantastic. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but the quality's great and the speed is amazing. And so yeah, I use that. I use LightWave CAD for a few things, or Architron, whatever it's called now. And that's obviously included in the Octane license, so that's great. Although I only started using the version that comes with Octane very recently. I was still using the old version of LightWave CAD from years ago that I bought. I use After Effects for compositing. mostly. And I've got Red Giant. Is it Red Giant Looks? Or Magic Bullet Looks, which is owned by Red Giant. Again, an old license of that I had years ago, just for doing grading and stuff. It's really good for getting like film looks. If I need to do any video editing, I'm using Resolve, because Premiere is just the devil's work and it's awful. Whereas Resolve just works. Resolve is just fantastic.
Well, I have to give Premiere some kudos here, and that is because it can read so many different formats.
Yeah.
I mean, it can. I mean, Resolve is very sort of picky on what formats you use, but sometimes, I mean, we use Premiere and Resolve at work, and sometimes Thomas, who is our editor guy, he's like, damn it, Resolve can't load this, and then he loads it, no problems, into Premiere, and then exports a version that actually, or a format
in Resolve.
To then use in Resolve, right? So, but I think Premiere has I think Resolve, to be honest, is a much better overall than
it just seems, it's just so quick, compared to, I remember the first time that I used Resolve for something, having used Premiere for years, and I would be pulling my hair out just trying to do anything in Premiere because it was so slow. And then Resolve was just like, just keep chucking it in, just keep putting more stuff on the timeline, I don't care, scrub through it, and it's absolutely fine.
Extremely fast. It is when you feed it formats that it knows and it can handle. Even EXR sequences you can put in there, and it will just, you can scrub it. In After Effects or in Premiere, it's going to be next frame.
And it doesn't seem to matter. I'd love to just take your audio clip of you doing those noises and just use them on something. I think. I can't remember what I was going to say. You completely put me off.
You put you off. You said that.
I did. Yeah, it's my brain. My brain is terrible.
Yeah, but
Premiere
we're talking about software and plugins that you have added.
Yeah, I think. The thing with Premiere is that it didn't seem to matter how many scratch discs or extra hardware you threw at it. It was always just slow. I think just the software itself, and I think that's always been a problem with a lot of the Adobe stuff. Essentially they just buy software in and then cobble it together so it kind of works together, and it generally doesn't. The shortcuts are different between all the applications, and I know there's different bridges and different ways that they are supposed to work together, but they rarely do. Resolve is great, and for what I use it for, it's I'm using the same sort of formats because generally I've created them anyway. And again, I suppose it's that difference between like a small sort of one-man studio where I can do pretty much whatever I want as long as the end result is okay. So a lot of my tools are based around that. If I need something for one job and it's worth, the value is worth me spending the money on it, then I'll do that. So Resolve, After Effects. I use Illustrator quite a lot actually. I'll draw quite a lot in Illustrator. Cinema 4D I've started using a little bit, but that's really only on there's like one or two customers that use Cinema 4D. So if I'm basically just working as like an outsource partner thing and they're using Cinema, then I'll use it. And there are some aspects of it which are great, some which aren't so great. But I think it's sort of been relatively easy to pick up stuff in it, and my brain, once I've kind of learned something enough as much as I need to, and I give my brain the capacity to move into something else, then I'm fine with it. And then it just takes me like a week to get back to using LightWave or something else. Blender is the same thing. Like Blender, I seem to use that more for any augmented reality stuff. So I don't do a lot of that, but I work with a couple of people on sort of AR apps and stuff like that. And for whatever reason, Blender just seemed to be pretty decent at doing like certain character animation and stuff, which I don't do a lot of, but it's quite easy to use for that. I use Modo a little bit, or used to, but really only for like UV models, UV LightWave models. And it's a shame that that's on its way out. But to be fair, I only use it for that one thing. I think I bought it for a job years ago, and I've still got like a perpetual license of it.
Okay.
And I just use it for UV and stuff. And opening some models as well. I think that's part of the thing with some of the 3D apps. It's as much as anything, sometimes you just need to open a model in something and convert it so that you can then use it in something else. And if you've got like big CAD files or, like engineering models and stuff like that, some will open them really well and some will be terrible, and it's a case by case basis. And that's pretty much it. I sort of do most stuff with that. As I said, I've got I use Studio One for audio stuff. And I've got Audition if I need to just quickly chop up a file.
Yep.
But everything's super basic. I know what I know. I try to learn new stuff, but I struggle so much with it. Because generally, if I learn something new, something else falls off the other end. I've got like a tiny shelf, which is getting smaller and smaller inside my brain. And there's only so much room and so much stuff is falling off. Sometimes I can pick it up and put it back on the shelf, but then something else drops off. Yeah, so it's a constant struggle.
Yeah.
But I think my thing has been, I'm very mediocre at a lot of things, and I struggle with learning a lot of things. But I think my talent, my skill is combining all those individual things and using them effectively to do something. So I know, I know there's amazing animators, amazing modelers, all these, all the different disciplines.
Yep.
I'm not particularly great at any of them, but I can use a very simple skill set to deliver what's needed, essentially. So I've embraced that recently.
Yeah. You're a jack of all trades, master of none, and sometimes that is what is needed as well. To be able to complete something. Because I wanted to talk a little bit about IT, the short movie that you made, because we were, as you said, sort of, that looks like a fluid simulator, and then I talked about that looks like just a texture, when it comes to the CD-ROM and that stuff, but it's all fully modeled, right?
Yeah, pretty much. The thing is, I seem to find that sometimes it can take longer to texture something than to just model it. And
true.
I suppose because I've done a lot of product stuff and a lot of architectural stuff, and computers are getting faster and more efficient, and software's getting better at handling stuff. I just figure you might as well model it. Obviously, there are limits, but I'm not going to be modeling like bricks, although I have done at times. But yeah, by the time you've exported a screenshot or an EPS of your UV window or whatever it is, and then you've done all the texture maps, and then you've put it back in, and then the client says, actually, we need to like change the size of that slightly, or we need to add a bit here, and then your texture's completely knackered, and you have to do the whole process again. It's just easier to pull polygons around if you need to adjust something rather than adjusting texture maps and UV maps and all that sort of stuff. So I will model as much as I can, and I just find it easier and quicker.
And probably a little bit more fun as well, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it just comes down to like editability, really, because you just never know with a customer whether they're going to change their mind on something, or even further down the line, I might need to use a model in another project, but it's just not quite the right size, and it's just going to be easier to cut that model up and know that the textures are probably still going to work. If it's just like a UV, I don't know, like a flat texture or a planar texture or whatever. So yeah, most of my stuff is modeled if I can get away with that, and then just using like cubic maps for like bricks or tiles or whatever it need to be. But even with things like that, like sometimes, so with the IT thing, like the floor tiles it's a texture, but some of them are like curled up in the corners, so it's just cutting out individual tiles and cutting them up just to give some variety to it.
Yeah, now when you talk about this, I actually remember back in No. When we used LightWave 11 in production at work, we had IFW2 texture sets.
Yeah.
Those were procedural stuff, and you could do so many cool things with it. Does that actually exist for current version of LightWave?
I'm not sure. I've not actually heard about it for years. It's like a real blast from the past. I think that's one of the things that I kind of miss a little bit with Octane is access to a lot of the standard sort of LightWave procedurals.
Oh yeah.
And even in other applications, like there are procedurals in other applications, but a lot of them aren't actually 3D procedurals. Like if you were to cut through an object, it's just going to mess it up because it's doing like weird
you've got to do like
and stuff.
UVW maps, haven't you? In a lot of apps, they don't have true 3D textures.
And that was
which for some things is bad and some things is good. Like sometimes it would feel like it would be nice to have a much more native way of just plugging a UV map into a procedural in LightWave.
Yeah.
But then at the same time having a fully 3D up, because it can sometimes work with animations. Like you want to make everything a bit jittery, so the texture moving through an object can just like work wonders. And a lot of people are like, how are you doing that? It's a really horrible hack. It just looks fine. As you're saying, so LightWave's the master of that type of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and it means as well, like just add in noise to stuff. Like you've got your standard texture maps, and then just put some sort of procedural on it. Or I love the way that a lot of them, like the tiles and stuff like that, would actually overlay over each other and like cell. I think it was a cells procedural, and there was like certain ones, and they would all kind of line up, so you could get some really clever things going on there. But I used to do a lot of my stuff was really just using, and certainly even with Octane actually, because of all the PBR stuff, if it's lit properly and you've got like a decent PBR material on it, really just playing around with things like the roughness and the color of it, and maybe adding a bump map. That's as much as you need on a lot of things. It seems really basic, but if it's modeled well, a really basic material on a well-lit scene is going to look like a decent material. So
yeah. I mean, we actually used the LightWave 2018 in production for the Crew 2 for some of the movies in the game there. And the reason why we wanted to do that was because of PBR, because that was the first implementation of. We still use the native render engine, so CPU based. So we used that one because we were also using Houdini and Mantra. Houdini's native render engine, and they were all PBR. So whatever text. And then we used a Substance Painter for all the textures, so we get the full PBR texture set out for each model. And it didn't matter which render engine you put this in, they look the same because it's a standard. And that blew me away when we started doing that. And Octane is just a much faster version of, or a much faster render engine than LightWave Native, of course. But I guess you can use the same PBR textures in Octane as well, as far as I know.
Yeah,
right?
it's I think it's become more of a standard. I think when you're getting into like game engines and stuff, it can be a bit weird, can't it? Because some of them will use like alpha channels in order to control extra channels like roughness or whatever. And it can get a bit funny. But yeah, essentially, I suppose that's where like the Megascans library is amazing. I use a lot of their textures and even some of their models as well.
I have claimed the whole thing so I can download it, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, I was there for that.
Not that we're allowed to pass that around.
But yeah, they're great. And even if you're not using all the maps, like quite often I don't use all the maps, but even if I just use like the bump map or a roughness map or something like that, they're so good. But yeah, it is like a standard, isn't it? I think the difficulty is always going to be the actual file exchange, like using FBXs or whatever it is. There's still not really like a good universal standard where you know that if you have something in this and you send it to that, it's going to look exactly the same. As close as we get to it, it's still not there. It's still painful. Very
painful.
Exactly.
And also that LightWave right now has two different FBX two different ways of handling FBX. I don't know if you have the interchange, and then you have the standard, and they both do great things, but not the same things.
And it's like, which one do I use? Oh no, that's broken my model. I'll not use that one again. Oh, but wait, I have to for this thing.
I think that's been. I think we actually had like a discussion on this, God, years ago. This might have even been like, I don't know, on like one of the Skype chats or something, or maybe even on a forum. But one of my bugbears with LightWave over the years has always been that there are sometimes like 2 or 3 versions of a tool. So like you've got Bandsaw and Bandsaw Plus as an example, or you've got Move and Move Plus, or you've got this and this Plus, and there's all these extra versions of it. And it's great that they've developed a newer version. But my thought has always been, if you've improved it, why do we need the old one? And if you haven't improved it, you just created a new one. Why have you done that? Just create one tool that does all the things. I suppose the interchange sounds like a similar thing. At least integrate it into one thing, and you just have options for how you do it. I say that, saying that it's really easy, but
I really like the interchange, because when you, let's say I bought a model from Turbo Squid. And it came with an FBX, and when I imported when using the old FBX tool, I didn't actually get the vertex normals, so but then with interchange I actually get the vertex normals, but then there are other things that doesn't come in. So it's interesting.
I mean, FBX models, is like
for models, I think if you don't have skeletons or things like that, here's a model with the texture set that usually works quite well with the interchange. It's LightWave struggles when you have, let's say I have a motion builder file with motion capture, and then I want to import that, and it's actually not just skeletons, it's actually it's textured objects and stuff like that. That usually doesn't come in well into LightWave, no matter how you do it. So there's stuff that they need to work on when it comes to FBX. And again, it's a moving target, and it doesn't help that Autodesk owns that format now. I think that I think
it's the reason why it's gone funny.
Yeah, I think actually, if you think about when Filmbox owned that format. And they were developing it. I had much better pipeline between, let's say, LightWave and Motion Builder than I have now. So something have changed.
Yeah, it's always been a bit weird and a bit janky, and
but
I don't know what the solution is. I suppose USD or whatever the next thing is going to be, but I suppose the difficulty is exporting from an application and then importing in an application, and sometimes it's difficult to know where the problem is, whether the export's broken in some way or whether the import's broken in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
So I suppose you kind of ideally want an FBX package that is a self-contained thing, and you put your file in it and it spits something out, and then you know that there's only one source of the problem,
Well, it's because apps make different assumptions, and so sometimes if you're going from Cinema to Maya, then if you write it from Cinema, it's going to make a different type of file than if you were to read it from Maya, and each file can have its own axes, which is a solution for like the Y up, Z up, and right-handed, left-handed problem. But apparently, it's terrible. They should never have done that way, because it just makes it more confusing and no one knows which versions of which.
One of the things I wonder a little bit, you mentioned that you actually use Octane, and that is because you think that the LightWave render, the native one, is too slow, I guess, for what you want to do.
I think that was a large part of it. It's difficult to remember exactly what it was, but I think it was primarily that it was just a bit quicker. Well, it was quite a lot quicker.
It is.
There's always been a balance of, people still talk about the older renderer. Was it 2015 that it changed?
Yeah, 2015 to 2018.
Yeah. So sort of prior to that, people still will still go on about how amazing it was, and you could basically hack it and blah 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 blah. And it was great, and it was a massive shock when a better renderer came in. Well, it wasn't a massive shock, but I think a lot of people were shocked that a better in inverted commas renderer came in with all the PBR and all this sort of stuff, and it was incredibly slow.
Yeah.
But it's different entry points, isn't it? Like you could, with the old renderer, you could spend hours and hours and hours up front trying to get something that looks good, and then it renders really quickly.
Yep.
And the alternative is that what you can do with the modern renderers is you just chuck something in and it looks great. And that's it.
Exactly. Yeah. I totally remember that, because it could take. I mean, if you wanted to do something that looks really photorealistic, that was hours spending on tweaking the shaders. While with PBR, you just have the object and the textures, and it just looks amazing. But it renders slower, of course. It's. I mean, I think
it depends on the scene, because sometimes I think the problem is that the sampling works differently in the 2018 renderer to 2015. So people would often load up an old scene with terrible settings for it, and then go, "Why is it slow?" It's like you're using it wrong. Well, what's the settings? And you're like, well, good luck, because everybody's sort of got used to the 2015 stroke. Because each version of LightWave, they went through that pain point of like, hey, we've got this new settings, and people are, do you not remember LightWave used to just have like low, medium, high?
Oh yeah.
And you're like, whereas then you started getting little fine grained controls. Then it changed to the custom cameras that they had, and every version brought it to new, like, oh no, I don't understand the settings, how does it work? And it was that, but people are like, I don't know, they kind of got used to it not having to do that for a while. I don't know.
I think that was one of the big things for me, like using Octane and learning to use Octane, and it's been similar with using other 3D software, is that sometimes you need to completely remove yourself from a situation and learn something new. Like trying to tack on new information onto something that you already know you've got all your biases, and you've all these old ways of doing things, and I don't think LightWave's exclusive to this, but it has suffered over the years of people confusing familiarity with the software as thinking that it's better than everything else. And I think the renderer was a prime example of that, of people struggling with the new renderer and they didn't know how to use it. But then you could jump into Octane and learn a new thing and be like, this is amazing. This is so much better than anything else. And it's just because you've taken yourself out of this familiar situation and actually forced yourself to learn it properly. So I haven't used the standard renderer for years, but I imagine if I go back to it now, I would probably be able to use it better than I could when it first came out, just because I've learned more about PBR rendering and all the things. But go back to like why I started using it. It was, so I was working at a VR company at the time, as initially as creative director, and then I became head of innovation. Basically, they didn't know what to call me. They didn't know what my job was, even though I was technically sort of one of three people that started the business. No one really knew what I was, because I was making like radio controlled dolly systems and building rigs for 360 cameras and rigging the cameras onto motorbikes and cars and whatever, and all this other stuff. But also part of that was trying to figure out pipelines for the 3D stuff and for capturing footage and dealing with the footage and dealing with 360 footage, like real footage, and also animated stuff, CGI stuff. And Octane, I think one of the big things is that Octane, first of all, it was a cross-application renderer. So there were some other people there that were working in Maya. Someone else came in, they were using 3D Studio Max. I was using LightWave, so we could have a standard renderer that would work across everything.
Oh yeah, that's super cool. Actually,
we had a dedicated render machine as well, so we could just load scenes up onto that and it would work.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the really great things on it was the 360 camera in it just worked, and it was the stereoscopic 360 camera in Octane. It was just perfect. It just did what it needed to do.
Oh yeah.
And whereas the LightWave one was, I have a feeling that Chilton might have worked on a camera.
Yeah, Chilton was actually working together with Kelly Myers, and they did Ubercam, I think they called it.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think Antti and some other people at NewTek actually added a VR camera directly in LightWave, and that one works really, really, really well. But there was a gap there where LightWave couldn't do 360 at all, and then that gap was filled by Kelly Myers with Ubercam.
Yeah, there was an interesting conversation with them about it, because the solution that I came up with is basically how Ubercam worked in the 360 mode, and I'm not technical at all. But my idea for a 360 camera was that you would basically just have a normal camera that rotates through 360 degrees, or it wasn't. I can't remember how many degrees it was, and I can't remember all the maths of it. But it was essentially you create a 1 pixel render that goes from bottom to top, and then that rotates 360. And then we had the developer that was working with us. He created a script that then just stitched them all together into a XY rectangular image.
Yeah.
And it worked on a flat plane, but obviously as soon as you looked up, your vision goes and goes to a point, and the same as when you look down.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because of that.
And we were having that conversation with Chilton, talking to him about it, and Kelly, and they were like, because I said, this camera's great, but we're noticing that like your eyes feel funny when you look up and down and can't quite figure out what it is. And explained what our solution was, and he was like, yeah, that's how ours is working. And so it was exactly the same problem. I think they did then change it into something else, but it was then that transition period of using the Octane. I think it was just like a demo version of Octane, and we did like some demo scenes. But the stereo 360 camera in Octane was just amazing right off the bat. And I still couldn't really figure out how it worked, because a lot of the stereo camera rigs were just so it was a stereo. The single pixel thing was a stereo rig, so it was 2 cameras set up for your eyes that you looked around, and then it's stitched, so it did like I can't remember how I did it. Anyway, it's stitched, so they were offset, so it shouldn't really have worked. There was like a slight inconsistency with it, but each eye was rendered as an individual strip, and then it went into like top and bottom for like the left and right eye. But yes, your eyes would pinch as you looked up. Whereas Octane just didn't do it, and I think there was something about it was working on like a per pixel basis or something. It was doing some really clever stuff. And that was it was amazing. It just worked off the bat, and then obviously all the PBR stuff and the materials in it were great. The lighting in it was great. And the cross-platform stuff was great. So I think the first, no, it wasn't the first job, but we did a job on that, which I can sort of share with you and stuff. We did a job for Mazda, which is where it really sort of came into its own. We did a job for Mazda where it was a 360 camera from the driver's perspective, and you're in a Mazda MX-5 driving around the hills. Actually, no, around the Swiss Alps. And then there was another Mazda that was kind of like chasing and racing with you, and then you go through a tunnel and it does all this magical stuff. And we filmed with a 360 camera, and then everything else after that. So all the exterior is 360 footage, and then the car and the driver is all LightWave and Octane.
Oh, yeah.
So the whole cockpit and everything was recreated. And then we used the 360 camera footage that was taken from the car as environment backdrops and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. I think I've read something about this project. I think did you do like an article? Didn't New Tech do an article on this, or was it?
I'm not sure. I'm not because it was from my old job. Basically, I didn't really sort of share that much about it. I think they've had it. They've got it on their website and stuff, and I've got the video of the project. But yeah, that was like a real. I think for me as well, it was a bit of a proving point that all the other guys were using Maya, and there was just me on my own. I'm like, I've just done this whole thing in LightWave, I think it was the only software that could open, because Mazda actually sent us the CAD files of the car, which included all the bolts and all the hoses.
You have to delete because you don't need 8 million bolts.
Horrendous. But LightWave was the only thing that could open it.
I have witnessed at work very lately, actually, when I was working on the latest game, Star Wars Outlaws. I was prepping stuff for animators, and I tried to open the FBX in Maya first, and Maya said, "Fuck you." Desktop, right? And LightWave was the only one that could open some of these FBX files. I mean, I could have tried Houdini. I think Houdini would have opened them as well, right? But it's kind of interesting how good LightWave is in certain things, right?
It is, yeah. I don't know what it is. I suppose it's a relatively lightweight application, isn't it? Like something like Maya, it's almost crashing your machine just doing the loading screen on it. There's so many resources being used by it.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, LightWave's always been great for even back in the day when the computers couldn't really handle many polygons or whatever anyway. LightWave was always just great for chucking stuff at it. And I think that, again, that comes down to why I tend to model a lot of details, and I like for the architectural stuff. Using 3D grass now, using like Megascan grass or whatever it is, and just chucking in. I'm kind of like seeing at what point my computer's going to blow up, but it never does. Just like, I'll put some more trees in and I'll do this, and the display may slow down a little bit, but I can still just keep chucking stuff in it. Like the software itself is like, all right, just keep coming. As long as you don't want me to move, then fine, just keep chucking it in,
You should try that, because I don't know if you saw Lewis's video fully, and you should try the instance painting. That can be really good for Archvis.
Oh yeah. When you get to the new version, yeah.
Definitely.
Lots of good tools actually coming now in LightWave, since it was resurrected by Andy Bishop and a bunch of other people use.
I'm excited by it. It's funny. That I don't know. I have moaned about LightWave a lot over the years. I still use it.
Of course.
I'm familiar with it, and it's I use it more than any other application. But I think I've just resigned myself that it's a bit shit, but it's my shit, so it's fine. I can still use it. But it's like a lot of, maybe unlike a lot of people. I then started using other applications, and I realised that actually it's not as shit as people make out. It's all very well to moan about it while you're in it.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I have been forced to use Maya, Houdini, and Motion Builder, right? For many years, since I started working 18 years ago at this company. And that is when you start to understand what LightWave is good at. When you use it, for that, it's absolutely amazing. It's actually really, really good. Sorry, I cut you off there, but I just wanted... I got so inspired here because I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's some things that it's not... Well, I wouldn't say it's not great at. Maybe it's a little bit behind some other applications. I don't do a lot of character stuff, but I've always struggled to do character stuff in LightWave. Whereas other applications, it's, there's an auto rigger and there's whatever. There was discussions recently on, I think it was on Facebook, and I mentioned about Maestro, which was a plugin that hasn't worked for years, but I bought that years and years and years ago, there was an auto rig application, and it had things where you just place the footsteps where you want them to go, and then the character would just walk along and do a proper walk cycle and all this sort of stuff. And I think the third-party developers that have been doing plugins have kind of kept LightWave going. They've done some incredible things over the years, which sometimes, maybe they should have actually been in the application, but at least it was a great platform for people to develop stuff on. And that was also part of the community, knowing that there are people that are investing in it, even if sometimes maybe the owning company didn't so much,
Oh yeah, that's true. And also I think during the years between 2020 and when LightWave died, well, New Tech, they stopped developing it, right? And what I think kept this LightWave going there was Michael Wolff a lot with his Patreon thing, which was super, super cool that he actually did that. And as you said, plugin developers have actually made LightWave. Do you remember F Prime?
Yeah.
Everybody remembers that.
It was...
that was... head blown away, right? Everyone talked about it, not just because at that time I was actually an intern at a studio in Stockholm, in Sweden. We were using Maya and all that stuff, but when I showed them F Prime, I had a cracked version that I brought to the studio. Sorry, whoever might get offended here, but I showed it to them, and they were like, "Holy shit, is that GI?" Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's, and they were like, they couldn't fathom because they were using like Mental Ray that was kind of slow, especially when you started to use GI and stuff, and then you had F Prime, and I was like, it's and I think that one F Prime actually saved LightWave between 7 and 8 because that was also when actually half the team left and formed Luxology to create Modo. So LightWave, third-party developers, thank you God for your work, right?
I think I think what's been incredible is that like with F Prime, there's still not really anything that does exactly what that did, being able to stop a render halfway through and then go back to it later or just go back and reiterate what you've already done. And
that stuff was amazing.
It's really clever.
I
really,
do
really
like
clever.
one pass on all frames, so you've got a very noisy animation, and then just keep refining it and sharing that across networks. There was I think if they could implement a lot of those features again, I think that would be a killer still.
Yeah. Actually,
in native, because you've got like and we've discussed this before, and I don't want to do too many spoilers. Well, it's not a spoiler because they haven't done it. What would be really good in LightWave if they had an official, which you could then instance and make your own, like kind of just like network. Like where you can sort of go, right, I'm going to create an Amazon cloud instance and I'm going to have 10 machines, and you just press like a little button and it just copies them up. And or you could even rent it from the guys at LightWave or Garage Farm or whoever wants to sort of, and you just sort of directly interface with it. And it's just like iterating all of these frames. Have a built-in cloud rendering solution. Because you have got all these unlimited nodes, but I'm a big nerd. I find that really hard and complicated to set up. Well, I'm a lot like you, Steve. I'm just one guy. I am my own R&D department, and I think actually, if I can't figure it out, I'm stuck, aren't I?
I think that is actually one of the reasons why something like Octane is so popular with LightWave, because there are not a lot of people that have their own render farm. Because you need to have at least 40, 50 computers to compete with, let's say, one computer that has Octane. You need at least 50 computers that are fairly good CPUs, and in order to compete rendering time, stuff like that. So, I think having something easy to that you can set up yourself just to render using the native one, that doesn't mean that you have to buy like 50 computers that have in your apartment because the electricity bill and yeah.
I had so like back in the day, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago, maybe just a little bit more than 10 years ago. I was in a different house and I had a garage that had a server rack.
Oh,
full
nice.
Full of computers just for rendering stuff. And it was basically like a 747 taken off every time I had to render on it. It was awful. It's got to
be in the garage also to be cold.
Yeah, I know. So I was working in like a bedroom upstairs and I had like network cables going all the way down through the house into the garage.
Yeah, wow.
Which, yeah, just seems like a million years ago now. But yeah, I can't remember what the software was, but I had some sort of render controller to control LightWave's thing because setting up ScreenMinet I just couldn't get my head around it. There was so much, and that is maybe, and this is not a LightWave exclusive thing. This is like a lot of software.
Oh god!
But when you get third-party solutions to something that's actually native, like someone has essentially just created a user interface that simplifies what should already be a simple thing within the software. But LightWave, obviously, because we've used LightWave, I'm more familiar with it. There has always been a really good community of people just essentially simplifying the tools, which LightWave is already like quite a simple interface, but there are certain things where I think technical people have created something and no one stepped in to be like, yeah, but actually, does it make sense? Like, it makes sense to you, but would a normal person know how to do this, you know? Should we have to go through and like reprogram or, you know, change files and you know, get set up with your directories and stuff, you know?
Yeah, I run, I have 6 computers here at home that I can run NRC, the network render controller that comes with LightWave. It started with LightWave 2018, I think.
Yeah,
but it wasn't until I don't think it wasn't until 2019 where they actually got it to work properly. However, there is a setup for this because you need to, and I'm thinking about actually doing a video tutorial on how to set up NRC because it comes with LightWave, and if you have several computers at home, I mean, it's just that it's a bit complicated because you need to know about networking and things like that, and actually have a centralized network space where you have all your scene files and things like that. So it's a different mindset. And then again, the hassle again. Okay, let's just use Octane and buy a couple of graphics cards instead, right?
Yeah, that's it.
That's what it comes down to, right?
Which, to be fair, is its own kind of hassle because the number of people that are here complaining about that as well, licensing issues, etc. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that type of stuff I've argued until I'm blue in the face. It's like, well, I can't get it to run, so it's useless to me. Anyway, I'll just move on with my life and never use that because it doesn't run on my computer.
It was Butterfly Net Render. That's what I used to use.
Butterfly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that.
But yeah, it was essentially it's doing what you can do. You can go through the manual and you can, you know, set up your directories and stuff. But having more or less a one button solution, like here's my, you know, LightWave, and here's the computers that are on the network, and here's the place that I want you to create a central file. And then it's like, okay, it's all created for you. Now just press render and we'll send it out to all the computers. Yeah, that's what you want, isn't it? You just, I think that's what most people want. They just want the simplest solution.
Yeah. Well, the more that it's simple, the more likely you are to use it, and the more that other people are likely to use it and recommend it, and it yada yada yada. It comes around and
but that's that's not a LightWave exclusive thing.
No, not at all.
There's a lot of that, but I think that there's having chatted on the forums for years and used to. And all the arguments backwards and forwards and stuff like that. I think a lot of the times, even suggesting that maybe there could be a slightly better user interface for a certain tool, you'd get a lot of pushback on it, because there would be people that are quite happy to do all the technical stuff. And, it's like, well, you need to just learn how to, I want to do this thing. I can't figure out how to do it. Well, you need to learn Python. Like, well, why should I have to learn Python?
Yeah.
It's just a little, just open this up and do a little bit of coding here.
Yeah,
why? I don't want to.
Just code the entire thing yourself. Lazy. I know. Like, okay, that was useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So the scene.
Yep.
So it's like super basic, this last thing, which is basically, there's no door on it. But it's all black on the outside, so there's just a little slippy sort of light there to look like the crack through the door. And this is the scene inside. Obviously, a lot of this is quite dark, so you couldn't see the Post-it note.
Yeah, that's true. We couldn't see that one.
I did. I noticed all of the weird tissues on the table.
I know. Yeah.
They look really odd, like with shiny like that.
Oh, they do. Yeah, they're shiny on there. But again, they're quite dark and thin. There's so there's like the Windows 95 for Dummies, and I can't remember what the other book is. But yeah, there was loads of little nods to things.
Yeah, like I said, I loved your
Amiga format.
For, it was the Amiga format one, and it was the real
video toaster.
Figure reel. I thought that was great as well.
Which I have. I have the gold.
I've got one
reel
somewhere. I don't know where it is. I should be sipping from it.
Wait.
Them.
I need to click there. Okay. Show the mug. Show the mug.
So this is the golden anniversary fake or real mug.
What? Wow. I don't have one of them. God.
Yeah.
I feel gypped now. God.
I won that. I was very pleased with that.
Just a regular fake or real one I just have.
Yeah, got the gold one. Special boy mug.
Luxury.
So in this scene, so we've got the little post-it note which has got, can you guess what game? Obviously there's the Konami code, which is pretty much everything. But then spawn helicopter and decrease wanted. I think it's fairly obvious.
Isn't this Super Mario?
No.
But it's a console game, right?
Yeah, so the top one is Konami. That's the Konami code. That's used for pretty much everything.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
And then the two codes underneath it are from another game where you'd have a helicopter and you might have a wanted level.
Yeah.
Is it Grand Theft Auto?
It is Grand Theft Auto.
I've never actually played it, so I'm just like, hang on a minute.
So
it was the wanted bit where I remember watching my friend play it once, and it was just all he seemed to do was just drive around and like hit random pedestrians and then run away from the police.
It's just like real life around here.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So yeah, there's loads of stupid little nods which you don't really see, but obviously replacing the ink cartridges and stuff with cheap ones. The little sticker on the front of the PC case as well is the Eggbox Studios logo, which obviously you can't see because it's OpenGL. So it's all modelled in the front of it.
But now the big question that we talked about here, is the ratio of the width of the floppy drive correct or not?
Yes.
Who knows? I think the floppy drive is correct. I don't know if the CD drive is.
Yeah, because it doesn't look the right ratio. I don't know which one's wrong, to be fair.
I think it was fairly close. But again, I'm used to just measuring stuff, but I can't remember the last time I had a CD drive. I can't remember the last time I saw a CD. I
didn't intend to create such a controversy, but I'm like, yeah, that looks wrong. I don't know why. It just does look wrong.
Quite possibly. Yeah, I think it's too wide. But yeah, that was just thrown together. And then this ink it's basically just a morph. It's just a morph map.
Right.
So it just spreads out.
Very clever. Wow.
Just because it's all it needs to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it looked very good.
It was going to pick up that pen and then just like drift it across the desk, but I never got around to that.
Well, it was only on for like seconds, so it was like for what it was more than good enough.
Yeah, so that's it. Simple as anything.
Wow. Cool.
Very good.
So there we go. There's the end of the controversy on that. And there's also, as I was talking about, the floor tiles. So that's the... Oh, hang on. Yeah, you can see these floor tiles here that just...
Mm-hmm. So you've just done random ones slightly offset.
Yeah. Yeah, again, nothing particularly clever about it.
I mean, I suppose in LightWave it's difficult to model in camera, but then for this it's just literally just modeling with the texture turned on, isn't it?
That's it, yeah. All I did is, so I think it's a Megascans texture, like floor tile texture, which it's, I think what's really cool about them is they'll say like they're 2 meters by 2 meters. So I created a grid 2 meters by 2 meters and split it up to align with the tiles. And then that's UV'd, and then I just repeat it and take odd tiles and give them depth and curl them up and stuff. So yeah, you're modeling to the texture. I suppose that's one of the difficult things is doing stuff to camera. That's one of the things that LightWave's always been a bit of a pain with because of the 2-app process. But yeah, so that's that. And then like in the other scene with the drips coming off the boot and stuff, they're literally just balls that have been stretched and drop and then squash. Cool. So yeah, nothing clever. Well, nothing complicated.
No, exactly.
The only clever bit is
it's clever. It's clever. It's not complicated. Two different things there.
Well, it's clever, but it's also it tricked us, which is the important thing. And I think obviously the thing that would have broken it is if it had to go over the edge of the table, and then you would have started getting very messy.
Yes. Yeah,
that's what would have broken the illusion. But because you'd done it as 2 separate objects, one which was doing the drip at the front, and one which is doing expanding puddle.
Yeah,
and they're just the two, just kind of like, it looks close enough.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's it. Everything, when you're doing stuff for yourself, it doesn't need to be great, does it? It's just you're just selling the illusion of whatever it is. And like the scene where he opens the door. If you see it from behind the door, the animation is so fucked up. It's awful. Mm-hmm. But it's the same as you see a lot of behind the scenes stuff of, Disney stuff or Pixar stuff, and everything's done to the camera.
Yeah, well, you'll see people that have just been stretched out because it makes it look fine in the camera, but it looks awful if you see it from the side. Yeah, because they just have to do a quick, dirty bodge that'll just sort of make it look like it's real. But yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to quite a lot of students over the years at different things, and I'm part of a VFX meetup in the city. And there were some students there recently, and it's quite funny how, obviously, because they've not been in the real world, doing this stuff as a job. They've just been learning from tutors and stuff like that. So some of their perceptions of how everything has to be done in a very particular way, in a very specific way. And one of them particularly was saying how he wasn't sure whether to get a job because he'd have to move to London probably and blah, 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 or whether to just set up his own thing. And I was like, you absolutely have to get a job. I was like, because if you just set up from now, you're going to really struggle to do everything perfectly, exactly how it's supposed to be done. The whole idea of working in this stuff is that you learn what you can get away with, what you can't, what the shortcuts are, and that you don't have to be perfect. If I'm creating a house for an architectural visual, quite often there's no back on it because I'm not seeing the back of the house. It's just a film set. But I've known people that have modeled the entire property. It's like, why? Why are you doing this? You don't need to. If if it's going to be shown or if it's going to show up in reflections or whatever, then absolutely. But you're sort of learning where the line is and generally try to be the right side of that line, but you don't need, there's no point doing more than that.
So, what is the number one feature that you would want to see in LightWave?
You only lied one. Sorry, because there was like about 1 million. I know myself. I would be like, well,
I don't mind the split application. because I think we all kind of work in that way anyway now. Like if we're, if you use an Octane, it's essentially a separate application as such. You may model in, you're using ZBrush, you're using Substance Paint or whatever it is. But being able to model to camera, having something like that. I know that they added, which I think was a feature that I requested many years ago, but having the kind of live feed thing, I think in the newer versions of LightWave. Yes.
You can have the layout camera in Modeler,
Yeah, so that's good. I think that's a good first step, but there are certain things where sometimes you need to model to camera and doing architectural stuff. You need to put a building within a landscape. It's so difficult, and I've created workarounds for it. It can be like a plane where you just create morphs of like different points on the plane, and then you put it in there and you do your sliders and get them into points. Like right now, I know what the landscape looks like, and you're jumping backwards and forwards all the time trying to do stuff. Whereas you use other applications and it's just so easy.
Yep.
So that would be it. Like having some sort of modeling ability within layout, even if it was just to do really basic stuff, just move some points where they need to be, set the camera up, and then go into Modeler and do the rest of it.
Yep. We usually ask this question, and it's about the community, right? And what do you think will help the community to be and stay positive, constructive, engaging, and energetic?
Alcohol works really well for me.
That's good. I'm happy with that answer.
We need more socials in pubs. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think
it is. It is. It's a very philosophical question, by the way. So
it's engagement, isn't it? And I think we kind of already have it to a certain degree. I don't think the core community aspect of it has ever really gone away. I think it's been dispersed. A lot of people obviously left and went to different applications, and we lost a large chunk of the community. But the ones that are still here, generally, I think people are very passionate still about the software and about the community and about, keeping things going. I suppose it's the thing that I've always struggled with, and at times has really put me off, is the kind of fanboy aspect of it, and people that they love the software, which is great, but not being able to see past maybe some of the problems. So I suppose it's that community engagement of the developers maybe need to listen to the right people rather than the people that are just shouting the loudest. And people need to realize that just because they love the software, it's not the best thing. And the same aspect, like just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's the worst piece of software ever. It's difficult. I don't know quite how you get around that, but I suppose it's just, it's also that thing of over the years, the developers and the companies that have owned LightWave and stuff they've either overshared or they've undershared. And there's never a right thing, is there? I don't know.
A lot of the lines have become very embattled. There's a lot of fortresses built around things now, and it gets very awkward when certain topics come up.
I think one of the really positive things to take away from it is that there is a community. And whether people are angry and pissed off, or they're excited and fanboying over it, or whatever it is, LightWave still has a community, and most other 3D apps don't. There are, I don't know, you can go on YouTube and there will be creators on there that create content, and they will have a community. But the actual applications themselves don't really seem to have much of one. And LightWave's always been really good for that. So I suppose it's nurturing what there is and managing that. I still don't fully know what the answer is, but I think just that people are engaged in it is a really positive thing.
Yeah, I was just thinking about we had LightWave forums, and we had CD Talk, and we had Spin Quad and Foundation 3D as well.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of actually very positive. I mean, CD Talk was a little bit hit and miss when it comes to positivity around LightWave, but it was still, there were a lot of...
After a certain point, it became toxic and everybody left, and that was
true.
that.
Once a certain moderator was put in charge of it.
Let's not... we all... If you know, you know. It's...
Oh, I think I know. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you would like to talk about? Or is there something that we talked about that you would like to expand on?
No.
Oh, great.
No, I don't think so. I could probably just talk for hours about any old random shit, but no, there's nothing I want to expand on. I can't think of anything. I think I feel like I've just talked at you for ages about
No,
stuff,
I understand, because you know what it is, especially because part of this is in my past a little bit, but part of it because everybody's, for LightWave especially, I think everybody's so siloed that when you get that wonderful opportunity to talk with people that are so in the same space as you, it's like whenever I go, it's an absolute chew on for me to get down to Mansfield every year, and I do try to go every year because it's this amazing vibe that you get when you're just suddenly nerding out with all your LightWave mates, and you're like, oh my god, we're speaking the special LightWave binary, and everybody else is like, what are you talking about, weirdos? And they're like, oh, this and this, and like something from 30 years ago, and we're totally getting excited about it and buzzing, and that is great. It's so good to be able to speak the same language. It's kind of and it's weird as well because LightWave, so it's sort of technical, but also not technical. It's about the passion. It's about the tricks. It's about everything.
I think that's it. I think that is, again, going back to the community thing of it, it's more than the software. I don't quite know what it is, whatever that magic source was that created that community in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think it's amazing that, amazing that Tony does the Create Expo every year and just brings all these people together. It was great, to meet you in the flesh for the, having known you for
a long time, and it's weird to actually meet someone for real. And it's people are different than you think they are, but they're also exactly the same. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, and meeting Ben last year as well. Again,
it's
such
surreal.
A massive influence on me. Not necessarily directly, but just consuming all this content pre-YouTube and just literally going cover to cover with these magazines and learning stuff and learning the tutorials in every piece of software and translating them to LightWave and stuff. And Ben's name was always the first name that I read.
Yeah.
And then meeting him and kind of trying not to be a big fangirl, but also not really knowing why, because it's not, he's not this incredible celebrity thing, but it's just his name was fully ingrained in my brain.
Yeah.
And obviously he has done loads of amazing things, and I'm sure we're all massively appreciative of that. But it's only really because of the Create Expo that a lot of us have actually met, and and meeting Richard and Duncan and everyone has just been all these names that I've known for years and never thought that I would ever actually see them in the flesh. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's super cool. Who would you want to see on this podcast?
Ooh,
good question. Obviously, we have limited ability. Although, if you've got any friends that might come on,
I don't have any friends that use LightWave.
No. That's well, apart from your online friends that use LightWave.
That's
friends,
it. But... I guess, have you had Simon on yet, Smalley?
Not yet.
Not
so
yet.
we definitely intend to get him. I just think you know, it's as silly as it sounds, but I was literally, you were online and I went, oh, Steve, hi. We're looking for a new speaker for the podcast. I definitely want to get in touch with Simon. I mean, I probably want to get Duncan as well. Yeah. And
Steve Clark would be cool to have as well.
Which one? Steve Clark. Oh. Yeah. I don't think you've met him, have you?
I have not met.
I meant Steve, because you've been at some expos. But he's been a couple of times. He's the guy that works on what's it called?
Visual effects
on the Sci-Fi Channel. That all the like Mega Shark Versus type of thing.
No, I think I did meet him.
Did you?
Does he work with the other guy?
Yeah, he works. Yeah.
I can't remember his name. Spud, whose name I can't remember.
Is it not something not?
Yes, Paul Knott.
Paul Knott.
Yeah, Paul Knott. Yeah. He was like,
I hate Maya.
He was like, I hate one of their talks on
we should get some of them on. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I would really want to have those guys on, because they are doing some amazing thing. They are just wishing that, I mean, they are doing 2-3 shots per day, and it looks okay-ish. I mean, and they wish like, hey, can we get the project where we can have, let's say, 10 days for each shot, and to be able to show really what they can do, right? But they are hired because they are very, very fast, and the output of that
crazy.
Speedy is crazy good for that speed, right?
Apparently, I may have ADHD. But yeah, I need a deadline. I don't know if they're the same sort of thing. Sometimes you just need that pressure to keep stuff out.
Sure.
And if you have infinite time to do something, it's very easy just not to do anything, isn't it? And just mess about and
Yeah.
But it's super impressive the stuff they do and the time they've got. Yeah,
it is. So those people would be super cool to have. Because then it would be cool.
It's a big list. It's getting bigger.
Yeah. We have so many people that we want to have on, and we also have.
And Dan, would need to get Dan on, because he's done a few talks. Dan Solis, yes.
Yeah.
When I went down to London early this year, he did laid on a little night out for us. That was fantastic.
Oh, cool.
I might be doing next year as well, because I am 50.
Okay.
God. Yeah. So I'm probably going to go down to London. So,
wow,
it's a bit scary.
Yes,
getting old.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve, for taking your time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. It's been super cool, and we would love to have you back to actually do a show and tell and do a revisit with you, where you can show more behind the scenes of what the stuff that you do and all that stuff. You're a very talented guy, so I'm very pleased to have had you on here. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you. And thanks. That's I like the praise. Keep the praise coming. I love this.
No, I mean, like I said, I've met you now a couple of times, and it's fantastic to have you on, because you're a great guy, and I already knew what you could do. So. And it's also like there's a saying, right? There's a saying, and it's that they never meet your heroes. Not that I'm saying that you're my hero, Steve. I'm not.
You can say it. You can say it. It's fine.
You're my hero. But I've never actually found any Lightwaver where it hasn't been like an absolute pleasure to meet them. So. That's not necessarily true. I think it's sometimes maybe it's just never meet people who you build up to an idealized version. But I think everybody that I know in the Lightwave community has always been so fun and down to earth and grounded and real and nice that I've never had a problem actually meeting them in real life. So
thank you all for watching and listening to this month's episode. Be sure to tune in next time so that you don't miss out on all the goodies we've got for you. In the meantime, if you have any news stories you'd like us to know about, you can reach us in the comment section or send an email to lightwavedigest@gmail.com with the word news in the subject line. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, share and comment. Your engagement is really important to us, so thanks in advance for your support. So until next month, always light the wave.